Your company's technology is known as NLG. What is that short for?
Natural language generation.
Okay.
So narrative science is actually an advanced natural language generation company, and Quill is an advanced natural language generation system. And what that means is that Quill takes this data, it generates language, but it figures out what to generate before it generates language. So it doesn't just, you don't just give it a fact and it says, okay, here's how I'd say it. You say, here's some data, and it says, oh, I got to figure out the facts first.
Mm. When your technology first came out, there was apprehension, particularly among journalists, it seemed, that they were going to be displaced. Has that actually come to pass?
As far as we can tell, no journalist has ever lost their job because of narrative science or Quill or anything we've produced. And it's primarily because we really focused on those places where there was a need, but the need was not for a single document that 100,000 people were going to read. It was much more for, there was a single document that one individual would read, but there are going to be 100,000 or 1 million versions of that document. And the notion really was that we would focus on what you kind of can think of as the long tail of content, where no journalist would ever, there's not a journalist around who's going to write an article that's going to be read by 3 people.
Well, they might, but
I mean, they don't want to.
Yeah, right,
they don't want to, and so that's where we focused, and that's where where in the places where we are still in journalism, where we still live, but it was never for us. It was never, we'll do Major League Baseball stories. Why? There are people doing that. They do a fine job, and there's no pain there. No one is screaming, we need more Major League Baseball stories. But we do Little League stories, and we hook up to data from Game Changer, and we write Little League stories based on that data. We wrote 4 million of them last year.
Is that right?
But it was because we knew that the kids would like it, the parents would like it, everybody would like it, and there were no people there to do that job, and there never would be, and there shouldn't be. I mean, again, there's no journalist who's going to go and watch, the Mighty Mites, the Mighty Mites playing the Tinies Astros.
Sure.
And it's like, wow, this is great.
Right. Compelling stuff.
Compelling stuff.
Yeah.
But Quill can do it, and the stories are great stories, and the kids love the stories, and the parents love the stories, and it's a real demonstration of what the capabilities are. It's generation of content where there is data, but there are no people, and the scale makes it impossible for human capital to be tossed at the problem.
Have you shifted focus beyond media?
Yeah. We started in media, but we pretty quickly shifted our view towards the world of really business data, and places where businesses have collected, maintained, expanded, are doing analysis on all this data, and then at the end, what do they have? And if they're, in the best of all possible worlds, that you get a dashboard. And it turns out that while that's better than looking at a dashboard, it's better than looking at a spreadsheet. For a lot of people looking at those dashboards, they still can't figure out what's going on. And we looked at that and realized that we were actually the last mile. That is, not to tell people what the data. It's not telling people what the data are, but telling people what has happened in the world through a view of that data. And so I don't care what the numbers are. I care about who are my best salespeople, where are my logistical bottlenecks, and Quill can do that analysis and then tell you, not make you fight with it, but just tell you, and tell you in a way that is understandable and includes an explanation about why it believes this to be the case. And so our focus is entirely, a little bit in media, but almost entirely in proprietary business data, and in particular, we really focus on financial services right now.
So we talked about that a couple of years ago, where there was this possibility of NLG extracting insights from these vast repositories of data. It's been a while now. How are organizations putting that to use? Are there particular use cases that you can point to and say, this is a really interesting application here?
Absolutely. When you take a look at what our clients are doing, they're either using the system to give them tremendous time savings. So having it be that someone who's running a fund doesn't have to spend 3 months reporting on it. They have Quill to do it in half a second. And that's actually a great use case, a powerful use case, a time-saving use case. I think even more exciting for us is organizations that have large customer bases, and they need to actually explain to their customers what's going on. They use Quill to take a look at the customer's data, to take a look at the data associated with other customers, figure out how that customer is doing, how that person is doing, and then reporting to them directly in something that's both personal and relevant and absolutely readable. So if you are, for one of our clients, they produce monthly commentary around how an individual's particular investments are doing. And it's not deep. It's just here's what you're spending on, here's what you're saving, here's how you could save more. And it's using their rules in terms of that side of thing, and then our analysis and generation in terms of the retrospective. The MasterCard example that I talked about yesterday is one where it's reporting to individual vendors as to because of their transactions, what their business is looking like and how they could maybe improve their business. And it's this marvelous world of actually making good on the promise of what big data was supposed to do.
Right.
But you can't make good on that promise unless you communicate it in the right way. And people don't understand charts. They don't understand graphs. They don't understand lines on a page. They just don't.
You're right. Yes.
And it's like, and
yes.
we can't be angry at them for being human. Instead, we should actually have the machine do what it needs to do in order to fill that gap between what it knows and what people need to know.
So is this evolution beyond the dashboard? Is it taking root? I mean, I'm desperate to see it take root because that's where I would like to see things go.
Absolutely, it's absolutely taking root. Actually, we'll be showing some things in January that really are what does it mean to take the articulation of what's going on with your data associated with dashboards seriously. I mean, what happens when you decide, no, I don't, the lines aren't enough. I really want the commentary. And so in January we're going to be releasing a beta of something that will make you so happy. Will make you so happy, and I think it will make everybody happy.
That's
it really
a good tease.
is.
I like that.
I mean, for us, it really is the point of the technology is to humanize the machine so that we don't have to mechanize people. And I always think I think it's a sad state of the world where technologists keep demanding that everyone become data literate. And what they mean is that everyone has the analytical skills needed to look at a data set and figure out what's going on. And I always see that as technologists saying, we failed. We could not figure out how to explain to you what's going on. And so you have to have our skills. And while I think it's a noble notion that everybody has these skills, it's not going to happen. At the end of the day, it's not democratizing data to say we're going to do that. It's meritocratizing data. It's saying the only people who are allowed to understand what's happening in the world that based upon this data are the people who have these high-end skills. And it's like, no, that's not right. It's incumbent upon us as technologists to move that data into information that is absolutely accessible to regular people. And if we don't do it, we have failed. And so that's a huge part of our mission.
Shifting gears a little bit here, what do you see happening with artificial intelligence in the short term? 2 years or so. Anything beyond that, I think we're starting to talk about
2 years.
Massive things.
I think over the next 2 years, we're actually going to see a shift in the business attitude towards artificial intelligence. And I think right now, businesses are really struggling with what's going to be my AI or cognitive computing strategy. And I think it's going to shift into, I have particular problems. Are there particular AI systems that can solve these problems? And I think that what we're going to actually get is a much more rational approach to the introduction of AI into the business world. So it's not, we need machine learning. It's, no, we actually need to understand churn. It's not that we need predictive analytics, it's that we actually need to know when our supply chains are going to break down. And once you get into that mode where you're thinking about your problems and what the solutions look like, I think you're in a much more powerful, businesses are in a much more powerful position to pick and choose and not be driven by, I read in the newspaper today that there's this thing, do we have it? And really get away from sort of hype and fear into really rational decision making. And I think I'm hoping that that's what the next 2 years are going to look like. I also think that we're going to see the commoditization of a lot of what looks like AI. I think it's particularly in machine learning and particularly in deep learning. We're going to see the release of more and more, Google's release of their machine learning API. We're going to see more and more of that coming out where organizations can start thinking about how to integrate AI into larger products, and it will sort of vanish as a label almost in a lot of places. And I'm hoping that nothing big goes bad because I lived through I lived through one AI winter that was tough, and if we have a real, if we have a business failure, a real business failure around AI or cognitive computing, it'll be a tough one to deal with. But I'm thinking right now, I'm looking right now, and I'm thinking that there's enough in the way of embedded systems and systems in use now that we'll probably be able to survive it. But I don't really want to deal with it. I really don't want to deal with it. So that's it. And I also think that there will be strategy. Companies will develop strategies around what do we know how to do well that makes use of data that we can really codify and turn those into automated systems, intelligent systems with the use of the technologies we now have at our disposal. And I think that we'll see much more, sort of much deeper automation in what we consider now to be fairly high-end strategic thinking. Which I think is totally appropriate because we have a really good handle on a lot of that. And that means that we'll have a bit more principled movement into the business world of these technologies than we might have now.
Last question for you: what people or projects are you following these days?
What people or projects am I following these days? I mean, I have to admit, I tend to be following the stuff I tend to be following is stuff in the world of predictive analytics and advisory systems. I actually, for me, advisory systems, recommendation systems, systems that are always focused on the future, those are the things that are going to be the most impactful and interesting. Primarily because if you think about why we want anything, we want systems that tell us about what's going on in the past. Not because we care about the past. Past is gone. It's because we want to be able to make decisions about the future. And the tighter things are in terms of predictive systems, I think the better place we're going to be in terms of decision making, and everything having to do with the cars. And I have a personal concern about the cars and the notion of augmentation, in that we have a little bit of nascent work going on in aerospace, and one of the issues in airplanes, in flying airplanes, is the transition between the autopilot and the human pilot, and that's actually a very dangerous place. It's a very dangerous time for a plane, and with self-driving cars, the only thing I would worry about there is that moment of transition between it's an augmented system, and it's driving mostly, and then now you're going to have to take over. And if you're not ready, then that's actually a dangerous place. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Tesla, actually, you have to have your hands on the wheel, because they're kind of aware of that. But there'll be places where that could be dangerous. So I like augmented things, but with driving, maybe not.
Right. Right. Well, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh no, thank you. This was great. It's always a lovely time talking with you.
Absolutely.
All right.